Testing. Okay, we begin with the homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Today is July 19th, 2014. Okay, good morning, everybody. What was that? Okay, so today we're taking the Ānāpānasati Sutta. This is Sutta number 118 in the Majjhima Nikaya. And the title Ānāpānasati means, of course, mindfulness of breathing. Okay, this sutta, it has a counterpart in the Sutta Nikaya. It's chapter 54. I think it's sutta number 14, something like that. But this long preliminary passage is quite unique to this sutta. And it seems that the preliminary passage has been inserted here in order to give special emphasis to the importance of mindfulness of breathing. Because it said that Ānāpānasati, mindfulness of breathing, that this was the meditation subject that the Buddha used in the preliminary phase on the night of his enlightenment in order to gain the jhanas, the samadhi. And so it becomes a very major meditation subject in the Buddhist tradition. And often it's taught to beginning meditators when somebody just becomes interested in meditation and wants to learn how to meditate. Usually we teach mindfulness of breathing, but actually if you've been practicing this for a while, you know it's actually one of the more difficult meditation subjects. Okay, so the sutta begins when the Buddha is living at Savatthi in the Eastern Park. This was the building that was established for the Sangha by Visakha, the lay devotee Visakha, who is called Migara's mother. And so it seems to highlight the importance of the sutta. It said that the Buddha was living there together with many of the most eminent of the elder disciples, the Venerable Sariputta, Mahamoggallana, Mahakassapa, Mahakachana, Mahakotita, Mahakappina, the Venerable Mahachunda, the Venerable Anuruddha, the Venerable Revata, the Venerable Ananda, and other very well-known elder disciples. And if you don't know who Sariputta, Moggallana, Kachana, Kotita, Kappina, Anuruddha, Revata, all of them we have on the Bodhi path where the big stone statues, all of them are represented along that stone path. Okay, so it says that at this time that the elder monks had been teaching and instructing the younger monks, instructing 10 younger monks, 20, 30, 40, and then those younger monks, after receiving the instruction, achieved successive stages of high distinction. This is a kind of idiom that occurs in the suttas, which is a kind of general term which indicates that the monks who are practicing achieve various stages of spiritual attainment and realization. It could be they're achieving the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana, or they could have achieved the formless meditations. They could have achieved different stages of insight knowledge, or achieved any of the fruits of the path. Okay, so now it's saying, to specify the occasion, it says that it's the Uposatha day of the 15th on the full moon night of the Pavarana ceremony. The Buddha was sitting out in the open, surrounded by the Sangha of bhikkhus. Okay, what is this Uposatha day of the 15th on the night of the Pavarana ceremony? Now in India, there's a period which is known as it's the monsoon period, 3 months when the rains come down very heavily. So this period becomes a special time of observance for all of the religious, or ascetic and spiritual communities in India during the Buddha's time, perhaps right up to the present. Because when it's raining heavily, then it's difficult to travel around. So it becomes the established practice amongst the ascetic communities, for the ascetics, the monks, the sadhus, to spend that 3-month period during the heavy rains in a retreat. This is called the Vasa, or Vasavasa, the 3 months of the rains retreat. Usually this will take place, according to the Buddhist determination, it takes place starting from the day after the full moon day of the month of July up to the full moon day of the month of October. And during those 3 months, the monks are not supposed to travel, but to remain fixed in their regular residence. So if there's some special reason, they're allowed to travel, to go outside, up to 7 days, but they have to be back at their regular residence on the 7th day. Okay, then the rains residence comes to an end on the full moon day, which will be the 15th, according to the lunar fortnight. In the lunar fortnight, one counts usually one fortnight of 15 days. Most of the time, the other fortnight has 15 days, but in order to make the year balance out, some of them have 14 days. So you get months of 30 days, months of 29 days. Then on the last day of the rains retreat, which is the 15th, the full moon night, all of the monks come together in a ceremony which is called the Pavarana ceremony. In this ceremony, because the monks have been living together in close quarters, they might have done something wrong, and so each monk, going down in order of seniority, invites or requests the other monks to point out to him any faults that he might have committed that he didn't perceive on his own. then usually when that Pavarana ceremony is finished, then the monks are free to begin traveling again. Okay, so this is the 15th day of that lunar fortnight. It's the last day of the rains retreat. So normally this would be the time when the monks are coming together all for the last occasion before they scatter and go wandering in the four directions. And so the Buddha is sitting there and he's silently looking over the community of monks. And then he addresses them and he says that first he says, I'm content with this progress. But then he encourages them to strive still more vigorously. He says, arouse still more energy to attain the unattained, to achieve the unachieved, to realize the unrealized. In other words, he wants them all to progress further and to make the effort to achieve the final goal, even on that final night of the rains retreat. But then he says, I shall wait here at Savatthi for the Kaumudi full moon of the 4th month. That is, normally, after the 3rd month, the Buddha himself would set out wandering, but he wants to give an opportunity, it seems this is his reason, for the monks to stay put, not to go wandering, and to give the opportunity for monks from the outside who have been spending the rains retreat in other places to come to Savatthi in order to see the Buddha during this last month before the Buddha starts wandering. So the month, this is actually the 4th month of the rainy season, but it's a month when the rains have actually stopped falling. And so it's a very beautiful month in northern India, when the weather is cool and pleasant. Most of the time during the day, the skies are clear, and it's the time when the water lilies blossom. The water lily is called Komudu. So this is called the Kaumudi, the month of Kaumudi. And then the end of that month is the full moon day, when, well, it's called the Kaumudi full moon. That's the full moon when the water lilies are blooming and they're illuminated by the light of the full moon. And the weather is clear and cool. At night, one can see all of the stars in the sky. Okay, so now scattered over the countryside, the monks who have been living elsewhere have heard that the Buddha is going to be continuing on in Savatthi for another month. And so they all leave, or at least many of them leave their residences, and they come to Savatthi in order to see the Buddha. And during this month, it said, as the weeks go by, the elder monks are teaching even more intensively. They're teaching and instructing the younger monks. And then the younger monks are continuing to strive diligently, and they're reaching still higher stages of attainment. Okay, then when the full moon in the month of Kaumudi arrives, again the Buddha is sitting out in the open, surrounded by the Sangha of the monks, and he surveys the silent Sangha of monks, and he then addresses them, and he speaks praise of this community. He says, this assembly is free from prattle, free from chatter. It consists purely of heartwood. Heartwood is the hard and solid wood at the center of a tree. It's the wood that one can use to make furniture. And so he continues to praise this assembly. He says, this assembly is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of anjali, as reverential salutation, an incomparable field of merit for the world. Then this assembly is such that even a small gift to it becomes great, that is, it generates great merit, and a great gift generates still greater merit. This is an assembly that's rare for the world to see, and it's worth traveling many leagues, even with a travel bag, to see such a community of monks as this. And then he starts specifying the achievement of the monks in this assembly. So he says first that there are starting from the higher and then working down in stages, that in this community of monks, there are monks who have destroyed the asavas, all the defilements, and who have become liberated by final knowledge. That is, that there are arahants in this assembly. There are other monks who have destroyed the 5 lower fetters and who have become non-returners, who will take rebirth in the higher realms and reach final liberation there. Again, in this assembly, there are monks who have destroyed the 3 fetters and who have weakened greed, hatred, and delusion. So these are the once-returners who come back one more time and then reach the end of suffering. And then there are monks who have destroyed the 3 fetters and who have become stream enterers, who have at most 7 more existences before reaching full enlightenment and gaining liberation. Then in the next couple of paragraphs, he speaks about the practices of the monks in that assembly. And first he goes through what are called the 37 aids to enlightenment, which are arranged into the 7 groups: the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 4 right efforts or right kinds of striving, the 4 bases for spiritual power, the 5 faculties, the 5 powers, the 7 enlightenment factors, the Noble Eightfold Path. Then he comes to the specific meditation subjects that the monks are practicing. And he says that in this assembly or in this community, there are monks who are practicing, we have the 4 immeasurables, that is the boundless loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, equanimity. Then there are monks who are practicing the meditation on foulness or the unattractive nature of the body. This is the meditation on the 32 parts of the body in order to see the unattractive nature of the body. Then there are monks who are practicing the contemplation of impermanence, observing the rise and fall of the 5 aggregates. And then he says, in this sangha of bhikkhus, there are monks who are devoted to the development of mindfulness of breathing. So in a way, he's sort of gone through the whole register of items till he comes to the item or the subject that he wants to focus upon in this discourse. Okay, so now in section number 15, he actually takes up mindfulness of breathing. And so he says, when mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it is of great fruit and great benefit. When mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it fulfills the 4 foundations of mindfulness. when the 4 foundations of mindfulness are developed and cultivated, they fulfill the 7 factors of enlightenment. And when the 7 factors of enlightenment are developed and cultivated, they fulfill true knowledge and deliverance or liberation. So here we could see that the Buddha is taking mindfulness of breathing, and then first of all, he's, in a general way, he's declaring that it's of great fruit and benefit. But then he sketches the benefits. First, this is like a synoptical teaching, or a condensed teaching. So he presents the condensed teaching in several steps. So we have the 1 meditation subject, mindfulness of breathing, fulfills all 4 of the foundations of mindfulness. So that is the second step from mindfulness of breathing itself. Then the second, fulfilling the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Then when the 4 foundations of mindfulness are fulfilled by the practice of mindfulness of breathing, the third step is that they fulfill the 7 bojjhangas, the 7 factors of enlightenment. Then when the 7 factors of enlightenment are developed to fulfillment, then comes the 4th step. They fulfill true knowledge and deliverance, or liberation. And so this paragraph sets up a kind of, almost like a table of contents, or an outline for the rest of the sutta. And then in what follows, the Buddha is going to fill in that outline by elaborating on each of these expressions. Okay, so first the Buddha is going to explain how mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated so that it is of great fruit and great benefit. And first he mentions what would be the ideal places for practicing mindfulness of breathing. That is, one can go to the forest. Here we have forest right around here. And normally if one goes to the forest, the ideal place within the forest to sit down will be at the foot of a tree. Because if one is sitting at the foot of a tree, then one has, often it's easy to form a seat from the leaves that have fallen, the leaves or the pine needles, if it's a pine tree. And then one has the canopy of leaves to give one shelter from the heat of the sun. And if one is going to be sitting outdoors, there's a challenge that one will usually meet. I guess one will meet it here as well as in India, and that is mosquitoes and gadflies and other creatures that come. So what's used in some of the Buddhist countries of Southeast Asia, they have, maybe you've seen pictures, the monks carry this big umbrella. In the Thailand they call it a krot. And the big umbrella has a mosquito net tied up over the top of it. So then when one sits down and one takes one's meditation seat, first of all, the umbrella, one hangs the umbrella from a low branch of the tree, and then one unfolds the mosquito net, puts the mosquito net around one. So one could be sitting enclosed in the mosquito net. Then the mosquitoes don't have a chance to attack one. But if one wants to be really, if one has really strong will, strong determination, one can just make the determination to face the mosquitoes. And initially, it's quite disturbing when the mosquitoes come. But if one just persists, first of all, it forces you to keep your attention on the breath. Because if you let the attention wander from the breath, then you start feeling the mosquito bites, and then you get annoyed with the mosquitoes and start swishing them away. Or if one loses the temper, then one squats the mosquito and kills it. Then you start worry that you break a precept. And then what you find, at least I found on occasion, not all the time, is that if you just endure the first few mosquito bites, after some time when more mosquitoes come, it doesn't really bother one very much. Because usually it's just it's just usually the first few mosquito bites that are really annoying and irritating. It's a little bit like when you're going swimming, you feel the water, oh, the water's so cold, I don't want to jump in. Feel it again, oh, it's so cold. But then you get up the nerve and you jump in the water. No, it's cold, but you get used to it, and so you can go swimming in the cold water. You know, once you're in the water and swimming, you don't think, oh, it's so cold, because you're used to it. Okay, but fortunately the Buddha says that in addition to the forest, the foot of the tree, then he says, an empty hut. So this would be what they call a kuti. In Asia, it's like a small, like a hut, usually with just 1 or 2 rooms. And it's very simple, just a bed, maybe a table, a chair, and then a place for sitting in meditation. And often they'll have either outside or enclosed inside a walkway. So when one wants to break the sitting meditation and do the walking meditation, one has a convenient place of 20, 25 meters to walk back and forth. Okay, so one goes to either the forest, the foot of a tree, or the empty hut. One sits down, one folds the legs crosswise. It doesn't have to be full lotus, but any comfortable cross-legged position. Keeps the body erect, establishes mindfulness in front of one, and then ever mindful, one breathes in, mindful, one breathes out. In a sense, this is like the whole essence of the practice of mindfulness of breathing is really summed up in that one phrase, ever mindful or just mindful, satova asasati, satto pasasati. Ever mindful, one breathes in, mindful, one breathes out. There's a question that often comes up for people practicing or interested in practicing mindfulness of breathing. The question is, where does one focus the attention when practicing mindfulness of breathing? Now the commentaries, you see, the Pali has an expression, parimukkhang satting upatapetva. Parimukkhang means literally around the face. And so the commentaries, even going back to the Abhidharma, say that one puts the attention at the nostrils or the upper lip. But what I've found with many people, many other people find this too, that this is a very, very subtle place to keep the attention. Whereas other places are easier to observe, at least the effect of the breath coming in and going out. So the advice that I give to people is initially, when you sit down, cross the legs, first get a sense, what I call a totalistic sense of the body. That is, get a sense of the body as a whole. And just maintain that awareness of the body in its totality. Maintain it even for a couple of minutes. Then become aware that one is breathing in and out. And wherever you can observe the impact of the breath most clearly, let that be one's initial observation post for doing the mindfulness of breathing. So some people will notice the breathing, the effect of the breathing with the expansion and contraction of the chest. So when breathing in, as the chest is expanding, when it feels the expansion, and just be mindful breathing in. As one is breathing out, the chest depresses or contracts. So then just be aware of that contraction and make the note breathing out. Similarly, it could be with the rising and falling of the abdomen. Again, when breathing in, just be aware of breathing in with the impact on the abdomen. When breathing out, be aware of breathing out through its impact on the abdomen. I've even noticed, because I have this head pain condition, so I have I have trouble fixing the attention anywhere on the upper part of the body. So what I've noticed is that if I put my attention on the buttocks, I can notice the impact of the breathing in and breathing out on the pressure of the buttocks against the seat. So in breathing in, because the body is expanding, the buttocks press against the seat. Whereas when breathing out, because the body is contracting, there comes a loosening or reduction of that pressure. And so one could feel in, pressing down, out, relaxing that pressure. So for a daily practice, or for initial practice of mindfulness of breathing, I say wherever one can notice the impact of the breath most clearly, just make that the observation post. But for the actual intensive practice of mindfulness of breathing, really with the objective of gaining a stronger samadhi, especially for gaining, if possible, the jhanas, the superior focus point will be around the nostrils or the upper lip, precisely because that's a very subtle area, and one gets the direct impact of the breath coming in and out there. And that's where the nimitta will develop. That is the sort of sign, often taking the form of a circle of light. Because when it's focusing on that area, because it's a subtle object, the mind becomes increasingly more subtle. But again, I say it's a very difficult area to focus on. If some of you have practiced in the Goenka's method of the 10-day retreats or longer, he always insists on observing the breath around the nostrils or the upper lip. And I did this course with Goenka I was in the very beginning of 2001 in India at Goenka's own meditation center. And he insisted on observing the breath around the nostrils. And the first day I was trying to do that, and it's very difficult for me because of this condition that I have. So I was just trying to focus on that area, and just one session and after another was going by, I couldn't get the breath. And I was thinking, just came to India a few days earlier, and I was thinking, intending to stay for a month, and I was thinking the images were coming, giving up, going back to the travel agent, or trying to book a ticket back to Sri Lanka where I was living the next day. Then I was thinking, they're giving this course even to hardened prisoners who are coming out of it and saying, wow, this is wonderful. And here I am, a monk for at that time, more than 20 years. I can't follow the breath. And I was getting really dejected. Just keep on trying. It's just not working. then I just thought to myself, okay, I give up. I just sort of dropped back, leaning against the wall, the image of, going to the travel agent, getting the ticket, flying back to Sri Lanka, leaning against the wall. And of course, I'm breathing in and out, and suddenly, there it is! What?
Found a jewel.
Found
A jewel.
jewel. Yeah, just when I relaxed the effort, suddenly it came by itself. Okay, so whatever the point of focus, the objective is to be mindful when breathing in, to be mindful when breathing out. And so initially, one will just, in the first stage, simply be mindful when breathing in, to be aware of breathing in, when breathing out, simply to be aware of breathing out. Whatever else arises, thoughts, feelings, sensations, imaginings, one just lets them all go and again brings the mind back to the breath. I know Goenka doesn't encourage making the mental notes, but he says just be aware of the sensation of the breath. But I would say my own experience is that it's more helpful to make the mental note of when breathing in, making the mental note of in, when breathing out, making the mental note of out. Once the sensation of the breath becomes very clear and distinct, then one can drop the mental label. But to help to avoid the mental wandering and distracting thoughts, it's useful to have that mental noting as a kind of focusing device. Okay, so the basic practice, and really this is like the foundation for the whole building or construction of mindfulness of breathing, is all contained within that first sentence. Ever mindful one breathes in, mindful one breathes out. Okay, but now the Buddha is going to show how the mindfulness of breathing is developed. And here he goes into what is sometimes called the first tetrad, that is a set of 4 items. So he says, breathing in long, one understands I breathe in long, or breathing out long, one understands I breathe out long. Breathing in short, one understands I breathe in short, or breathing out short, he understands I breathe out short. So now, as one is observing the breath with mindfulness, one notices that there's different lengths to the breath. Sometimes the breath is very slow and long. Sometimes it's quicker, more rapid, and so it's short. So in this phase, one makes the mental note of the length of the breath, whether it's long or short. And of course, this is relative, or the two are relative to each other. Different people will have different lengths of their breath. And it's always been a little bit curious to myself why the long breath is put before the short breath. Because in just about everybody's experience, when one first sits down and starts to meditate, the breathing comes more, because the mind is still in a core state, the breathing comes more quickly. And so the breath is, correspondingly, the breath is shorter. Then as the mind becomes more quiet and peaceful, then the breath will become longer, more drawn out, and more subtle, till the point is reached sometimes where it seems one isn't breathing at all, but it's actually taking place, but very, very subtly. Okay, and the verb that's used here, this is interesting, that it uses the verb here, pajanati, which is related to the noun panya, which normally means wisdom. So this is not, at this point, pajanati isn't suggesting that this is an act of wisdom, but it's, we could say it's a clear discernment of the length of the breath, whether it's long or short. Okay, so the distinction between the long and short breath, these make up the first two items in the first tetrad. Then comes the third item in the tetrad. And with this, there are different interpretations. Okay, it says, he trains thus, I shall breathe in, I'm going to delete here the phrase that comes in brackets. So the actual Pali text says, I shall breathe in experiencing the whole body. He trains thus, I shall breathe out experiencing the whole body. And in Pali, do you see one of those writers, the pens? Maybe there's one on the table, on the desk. No. Okay, if not, then we just can't write today. Oh, that's right, yeah. From downstairs we had them. Okay. This is okay. Yeah, the Pali expression here is sabba kaya pati samvedi. So literally, sabba is all, kaya is body, and pati samvedi means experiencing. Now this is the way the tradition explains this phrase. This is a tradition that comes down in the Visuddhimagga, the commentaries. They say that what's meant by experiencing the whole body is experiencing the whole body of breath, which means experiencing each breath in its totality.
That's why the phrase of breath was added here, following the tradition. So the way they explain this is that they say each breath has 3 phases. There is the beginning phase, which is, for example, with the in-breath, that very moment when one starts to draw the breath in. Then there's the middle phase, which is the entire extension of the breath, drawing the breath in all the ways up, up, up. Then the third phase is the ending of the breath, just as one brings the breath to an end. And similarly with the out-breath, there's the beginning of the out-breath, where one just starts to exhale the air. Then there's the middle phase, which is the full extension of the out-breath. Then there's the end phase, where the out-breath comes to an end. So they say that in this stage of practice, one makes the determination to follow each in-breath and each out-breath through each of its 3 stages. I seem to be getting an echo. Is that the case? I don't know where it's coming from. Is it coming from the computer? Okay, let us. Excuse me.
Maybe run out of battery. I don't know.
This one, it's strong. There's no problem with the battery. It's just that I hear a bounce back. You do hear it also.
Testing 1, 2, 3. There's no bounce back with this. Testing 1, 2, 3. No bounce back. Okay, so this is the way the tradition explains it. With each in-breath, one is aware of all 3 phases, beginning, middle, end. And then with each out-breath, one is aware of beginning, middle, end. And at the time I was working with this, I have to say, I actually wanted to leave it without the bracketed phrase. But my teacher of the time, who was sort of supervising me in this translation, or giving advice, he said, people won't understand this. And so he was, in a way, more follow the commentarial tradition more strictly than I did. So he said, to make it clear for people, you should put in-breath and out-breath in brackets. And I said, I don't want to do that because it's not in the text itself. He said, you'd better do it. So I didn't have a choice. But then when I did the translation of the Sutta Nikaya, by that time he had passed away, so I was free to follow my own inclination. Okay, now if one just takes the words by themselves without following the commentary, it seems to be saying that as one is breathing in and out, one is aware of or experiencing the whole body. And I think what gives further strength to that interpretation is the word patisangvedi. Because the word patisangvedi conveys a stronger meaning than the sense of being aware of. If the objective is to be aware of the entire breath, I think the text would have used the word pajanati. he understands or he knows that, or he knows the entire body of breath. He knows the entire body of the out-breath.